If pain and suffering was in form of a person, it would have been this particular patriarch. This patriarch faced so much pain and suffering that, if I may say, wasn't befitting of someone who was blessed by the God of heaven, unlike his father and grandfather. They experienced God's hand all around them wherever they went, and the anger of God was on whomever had an evil intention against them. But this patriarch, however, was the opposite. He once made enemies with so many nations just by sitting quietly in his home. But why did he go through this type of huddles? Some might say it was the wrong act which he committed, but the crime in which many said he committed to earn such suffering, or should I say curse, he wasn't even the one who fully spearheaded the whole crime, but was only an accomplice who was just following instructions. So why did he have to face such great punishment and pain for such crime? Was he really serving a punishment for the crime he committed? Or was the fact that he had to go through all those pain and suffering for a different purpose entirely? That we would find out while telling his story. Oh, and by the way, the patriarch we're going to be talking about in this story is, you guessed it, Jacob. It all began once upon a time, in the land of Canaan. There lived a couple named Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac was the son of the patriarch Abraham, known for his faith and obedience to God. Rebekah, on the other hand, was chosen by Abraham's servant to be Isaac's wife, a testament to her kindness and beauty. After being married for some time, Isaac and Rebekah longed for a child for many years and prayed fervently to God. Despite their deep love for each other, their home remained silent and empty, devoid of the laughter and joy that children bring. As the years passed, their hope waned, and the ache of unfulfilled longing weighed heavily upon their hearts. Yet in the midst of their despair, they clung to their faith, trusting in the promise of God to bless them with descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. In their darkest moments, Isaac and Rebekah turned to God in prayer, pleading for the miracle they so desperately desired. With tears streaming down their faces, they poured out their hearts, beseeching God to grant them the gift of a child. And finally, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, their prayers were answered. But here is where the tale takes a curious turn. For in the womb, Rebekah felt a tumultuous stirring, a struggle between two beings that seemed to echo the clash of nations. Puzzled and troubled, she sought the Lord's guidance, and what she heard filled her with awe and trepidation. "Two nations are in your womb," the Lord declared, "and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The elder shall serve the younger." After God's revelation to her, the twins Esau and Jacob were born, with Esau being the first to emerge, red and hairy, while Jacob grasped onto his brother's heel, as if vying for position even at birth. It was this incident that led to Jacob's name, which means heel grabber or supplanter. And that name given to him by her mother would change Jacob's life forever. As the twins grew, their personalities and interests diverged. Esau was a skilled hunter, favored by his father Isaac, while Jacob was more inclined toward domestic pursuits, favored by his mother Rebekah. Their family dynamics were complicated by Isaac's preference for Esau and Rebekah's preference for Jacob, setting the stage for future conflict. But as is often the case with twins, their sibling rivalry knew no bounds. I personally believe there would have been lots of cases in their lives where Esau boasted to Jacob of his seniority, which was only by a mere moment, and taunted Jacob with his birthright, which was the privilege of inheritance bestowed upon the firstborn son. And this boasting would have made Jacob jealous and desired the birthright for himself. His jealousy was what led to the next action in this story. One day, as the sun beat down mercilessly upon the arid landscape of Canaan, Esau returned from a fruitless hunting trip, his stomach gnawing with hunger and his spirit heavy with fatigue. The tantalizing aroma of stew wafted through the air, drawing him inexorably toward the camp where his brother Jacob tended the pot over an open flame. "Give me some of that red stew," Esau demanded, his voice tinged with desperation. "I am famished." But Jacob, ever the opportunist, saw a chance to capitalize on his brother's weakness. "Sell me your birthright," he proposed casually, "and I will give you some stew." Now, the birthright was no trifling matter. It was a sacred inheritance, entitling the firstborn son to a portion of the family's blessings and the prestigious role of family patriarch upon their father's passing. But in his hunger-induced delirium, Esau's priorities were skewed, his desires clouding his judgment. "What good is this birthright to me if I am dead from starvation?" Esau retorted dismissively. "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" And with that reckless declaration, Esau sealed his fate. In exchange for a mere bowl of stew, he willingly relinquished his birthright to his cunning younger brother Jacob. But many people, if faced with this kind of situation, would have taken what Jacob said for a joke and resorted to the same action which Esau took. This is why we must watch what we say, as well as what we accept with our mouths and what we jokingly reject. There is power in the tongue, and although many might not believe, the spiritual controls the physical. Let's continue. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert sands, the transaction was complete. Esau, sated but hollow-eyed, returned to his tent, unaware of the gravity of his impulsive decision. But Jacob, shrewd and calculating, knew full well the significance of what had transpired. With a wry smile, he watched his brother depart, knowing that he had secured for himself a position of privilege and power within the family. And so, under the fading light of the setting sun, the brothers' destinies diverged, their paths diverging like the forked branches of a desert oasis. Little did they know that this seemingly inconsequential exchange would set in motion a series of events that would shape the course of their lives and the destiny of their descendants for generations to come. And so, as the sun set on another day in the land of Canaan, the stage was set for the next chapter in the extraordinary saga of Isaac, Rebekah, Esau, and Jacob. As time passed in their family, Isaac grew old and his eyesight dimmed, signaling the twilight of his days. With the weight of his impending mortality pressing upon him, Isaac resolved to bless his eldest son Esau. He called for Esau and said, "My son." "Yes, father," Esau replied. "I am an old man now," Isaac said, "and I don't know when I may die. Take your bow and a quiver full of arrows and go out into the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare my favorite dish and bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessing that belongs to you, my firstborn son, before I die." But Rebekah, ever vigilant and shrewd, overheard Isaac's intentions and seized upon an opportunity to ensure that her beloved son Jacob received the blessings instead. In this way, what took place in the spiritual after the exchange of birthright was about to manifest itself in the physical. Let's continue. So Rebekah, gathering her wits and summoning her resolve, she concocted a daring plan to deceive her husband and secure Jacob's rightful place as the bearer of the family's blessings. So when Esau left to hunt for the wild game, Rebekah, approaching Jacob with a sense of urgency and determination, she said to her son Jacob. Rebekah revealed her scheme in hushed tones, her eyes flashing with intensity and fervor. "Listen," she said to her son Jacob. "I overheard your father say to Esau, 'Bring me some wild game and prepare me a delicious meal. Then I will bless you in the Lord's presence before I die. Now, my son, listen to me. Do exactly as I tell you. Go out to the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I'll use them to prepare your father's favorite dish. Then take the food to your father so he can eat it and bless you before he dies." Jacob, torn between loyalty to his mother and fear of deceiving his father, hesitated, his heart heavy with uncertainty. "But look," Jacob replied to Rebekah. "My brother Esau is a hairy man and my skin is smooth. What if my father touches me? He'll see that I'm trying to trick him, and then he'll curse me instead of blessing me." So we can see that although he was part of the deception, he wasn't all in on the plan and was more or less forced into it. Let's continue. But his mother replied, "Then let the curse fall on me, my son. Just do what I tell you. Go out and get the goats for me." So Jacob went out and got the young goats for his mother. Rebekah took them and prepared a delicious meal, just the way Isaac liked it. Then she took Esau's favorite clothes, which were there in the house, and gave them to her younger son, Jacob. She covered his arms and the smooth part of his neck with the skin of the young goats, making him fit as the first son destined to take the blessing. Then she gave Jacob the delicious meal, including freshly baked bread. So Jacob, with bated breath and trembling hands, approached his father's bedside, his heart pounding in his chest like a drumbeat of dread as he took the food to his father. "My father?" he said. "Yes, my son," Isaac answered. "Who are you, Esau or Jacob?" Jacob replied, "It's Esau, your firstborn son. I've done as you told me. Here is the wild game. Now sit up and eat it so you can give me your blessing." Isaac asked, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God put it in my path," Jacob replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come closer so I can touch you and make sure that you really are Esau." So Jacob went closer to his father, and Isaac touched him. "The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's," Isaac said. But he did not recognize Jacob because Jacob's hands felt hairy just like Esau's. So Isaac prepared to bless Jacob. "But are you really my son, Esau?" he asked. "Yes, I am," Jacob replied. Then Isaac said, "Now, my son, bring me the wild game. Let me eat it, and then I will give you my blessing." So Jacob took the food to his father, and Isaac ate it. He also drank the wine that Jacob served him. But Isaac, though blind, was still suspicious of Jacob because of his voice. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come a little closer and kiss me, my son." So Jacob went over and kissed him, and when Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he was finally convinced, and he blessed his son. He said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of the outdoors, which the Lord has blessed." So Jacob embraced his destiny as the bearer of the family's blessings, a mantle of honor and responsibility that would shape the course of his life and the destiny of his descendants for generations to come. Although it might look like deception, all these was bound to happen, because we know that the spiritual controls the physical, and Esau sold his birthright, which was like the license to receiving the blessings, and because of that, some transactions happened in the spiritual which lead to the stealing of his blessing in the physical. But little did Jacob know that his act of deception would have profound consequences, unleashing a tide of betrayal and resentment that would sweep through his family like a tempestuous storm. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and almost before Jacob had left his father, Esau returned from his hunt, weary and famished from his exertions. Esau prepared a delicious meal and brought it to his father. Then he said, "Sit up, my father, and eat my wild game so you can give me your blessing." But Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" Esau replied, "It's your son, your firstborn son Esau." Isaac began to tremble uncontrollably and said, "Then who just served me wild game? I have already eaten it, and I blessed him just before you came, and yes, that blessing must stand." When Esau heard his father's words, he let out a loud and bitter cry. "Oh, my father, what about me? Bless me too," he begged. But Isaac said, "Your brother was here, and he tricked me. He has taken away your blessing." Esau exclaimed, "No wonder his name is Jacob, for now he has cheated me twice. First he took my rights as the firstborn, and now he has stolen my blessing." But did Jacob trick Esau the first time? Let's continue with the story. Esau's heart was consumed with bitterness and resentment. Determined to avenge what he perceived as a betrayal of the highest order, Esau vowed to kill his brother Jacob as soon as the period of mourning for their father Isaac had passed. Meanwhile, Jacob, after hearing his brother's plan from his mother, fled into the wilderness, leaving behind everything he had ever known and embarking on a journey to his uncle's house, a journey of self-discovery and redemption. Or was it? But as he journeyed toward his uncle Laban's house in Haran, something transformative, or should I say incredible, happened to him. Although you guys might know this particular incident that took place at this point in time, but there is something very important I want to point out from this very encounter that many might not have noticed. Let's continue. So, while he was on his journey, at sundown he arrived at a good place to set up camp and stopped there for the night. Then Jacob found a stone to rest his head against and lay down to sleep. As he slept, he dreamed of a stairway that reached from the earth up to heaven, and he saw the angels of God going up and down the stairway. At the top of the stairway stood the Lord, and he said, "I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on belongs to you. I am giving it to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They will spread out in all directions, to the west and the east, to the north and the south. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. What's more, I am with you, and I will protect you wherever you go. One day I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have finished giving you everything I have promised you." Let's stop here a bit. Every Christian would surely have known this part of the story, but what most of you didn't know is this. This was the very first time that God spoke to Jacob. Jacob might have heard about God Almighty from his father, but this was Jacob's very first encounter or experience with the God he had heard about from his father. Although I suspect the person who might have heard more about God was Esau. This is because Esau was closer to his father than Jacob was, and God All-Knowing didn't reveal himself as God Almighty, but instead he revealed himself as the God of his grandfather and his father, making sure Jacob knew this wasn't one false god or any other gods out there, but the very one which his father might have told him about. So God made sure there was this knowing of his person. And here is Jacob's response. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it." But he was also afraid and said, "What an awesome place this is! It is none other than the house of God, the very gateway to heaven." The next morning, Jacob got up very early. He took the stone he had rested his head against, and he set it upright as a memorial pillar. Then he poured olive oil over it. He named that place Bethel, which means house of God, although it was previously called Luz. Now hear what Jacob said. Then Jacob made this vow. "If God will indeed be with me and protect me on this journey, and if he will provide me with food and clothing, and if I return safely to my father's home, then the Lord will certainly be my God. And this memorial pillar I have set up will become a place for worshiping God, and I will present to God a tenth of everything he gives me." Can you see? The Lord wasn't his God as at this point. It was his very first experience with God ever since he was born. And he also made a vow saying he will accept God as his God if God will be with him. What does this say? God wasn't his God. Although his father might have told him about God, but God wasn't his God. I'm getting somewhere with this. Just stick with me as we continue in this story. After Jacob's encounter with God at Bethel, he became a new man. Not just any new man, but one who now had a little personal knowledge of God. And that's not all. He also became someone who was now conversant with God. But although there was a little knowledge of God, there wasn't yet a relationship. But that was about to change. Jacob then continued his journey to his uncle Laban's house, where he would seek refuge and begin a new chapter in his life. But little did he know the trials and tribulations that awaited him in Haran, where he would encounter love, betrayal, and ultimately redemption on his path to becoming the patriarch of the 12 tribes of Israel. Upon reaching Haran, Jacob encountered Rachel, the daughter of Laban, at a well. She was beautiful, and Jacob was instantly captivated by her. And after that, Rachel took him to her house, which is also his uncle Laban's house. When he met Laban, Rachel's father, he was welcomed warmly, for Laban was his mother Rebekah's brother. Jacob recounted his journey and his encounter with God, and Laban, eager to have such a blessed man in his household, offered him hospitality. But little did Jacob know that his own traits of cunning and shrewdness would soon be turned against him. After a month of staying with Laban, Jacob, motivated by his love for Rachel, offered to work for Laban for 7 years in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage, in which Laban agreed. The years seemed to fly by for Jacob, as his love for Rachel was so deep. However, the wedding night would reveal Laban's own deceptive nature. When the time came, Laban, under the cover of darkness, brought Leah, his elder daughter, to Jacob instead of Rachel. But Jacob, unaware of the switch, consummated the marriage, only to discover in the morning that he had been deceived. Furious and heartbroken, Jacob confronted Laban, but Laban defended his actions, citing the custom of not marrying off the younger daughter before the elder. However, Laban offered a compromise. Jacob could marry Rachel as well, but only after fulfilling a week of marriage with Leah and agreeing to work another 7 years for Laban. Jacob, driven by his love for Rachel, reluctantly agreed. Thus, Jacob found himself bound in marriage to 2 sisters, a situation that would sow discord and rivalry between Leah and Rachel, while Jacob found himself in the middle of the women's quarrel. Jacob's household grew, but so did his struggles. After fulfilling his 14 years of service for Rachel and Leah, Jacob wished to return to his homeland. However, Laban, recognizing the prosperity Jacob had brought to his household, persuaded him to stay by offering him wages. Jacob, ever the shrewd negotiator, made a deal with Laban to take as his wages all the speckled, spotted, and dark-colored sheep and goats from Laban's flocks, a seemingly fair agreement. But Laban, not to be outdone, removed all such animals from the flocks and placed them under the care of his sons, leaving Jacob with only the pure-colored animals. Although many people might see this as a deceptive bargain, and how God blessed him regardless, what I saw from this bargain was God creating another avenue to show another character or aspect of himself to Jacob, so Jacob could know God's person. Let's see what happened next. As Jacob tended the flocks, he employed a shrewd strategy inspired by a dream from God. He placed peeled branches of poplar, almond, and plane trees in the watering troughs, where the strongest of the flock came to drink and mate. As the animals saw the speckled and striped patterns on the branches while they drank, they bore young that were speckled, spotted, and dark-colored. Thus, Jacob's flocks grew strong and numerous, while Laban's flocks remained weak. If you read the story, you find out that God told Jacob that he has heard all his struggles and how Laban had treated him badly, and because of that, he has decided to give him all that Laban has. Imagine having such dependable God who sees all your struggles and is always there at the point of your need. Isn't that kind of God very dependable? Who wouldn't want to depend and follow the instructions of that kind of God? So you see, this event changed Jacob, and he became a man who acknowledged God as the giver of everything that he has, transforming him to someone that now wholeheartedly followed God. And whenever God told him to move, he moved. Whenever God told him to stay, he stayed. Even from the way he began to speak changed in Genesis chapter 31. After the incident which God used to transfer Laban's wealth to him, Laban and his son began to look despicable at Jacob, which mad Jacob called Rachel and Leah out to the field where he was watching his flock. And then see what he said to them. He said to them, "I have noticed that your father's attitude toward me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You know how hard I have worked for your father, but he has cheated me, changing my wages 10 times. But God has not allowed him to do me any harm. For if Laban said, 'The speckled animals will be your wages,' the whole flock began to produce speckled young. And when he changed his mind and said, "The striped animals will be your wages," then the whole flock produced striped young. In this way, God has taken your father's animals and given them to me. You see, God made sure he knew that he was the one behind all those experiences, so he can know who was behind him. And that made him humbler, knowing he didn't deserve such care. As Jacob's journey continued, God's presence in his life became increasingly evident. After 20 long years of service in Laban's house, years marked by deception, toil, and ultimately divine blessing, Jacob was ready to return to his homeland. He had fulfilled his commitments to Laban, and his heart yearned for the land of his fathers. But leaving Laban's house was not without its perils. When Jacob set out with his wives, children, and all his possessions, he did so quietly, without informing Laban. He knew that Laban, who had benefited greatly from Jacob's presence, would not let him go easily. And indeed, when Laban discovered Jacob's departure, he pursued him with anger and ill intentions. Laban's heart was filled with thoughts of retribution, for he felt wronged by Jacob's sudden departure and suspected theft of his household gods, though it was Rachel, not Jacob, who had taken them. However, as Laban closed in on Jacob, God intervened. In a dream, God warned Laban, saying, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." This divine warning was a clear message that God was watching over Jacob, protecting him even as he ventured into the unknown. When Laban finally caught up with Jacob in the hill country of Gilead, he confronted him, but his anger was tempered by the fear of God's warning. He confessed to Jacob that it was God who had restrained him from acting harshly, admitting that his intentions had not been good. Without God's intervention, Laban's wrath might have resulted in severe consequences for Jacob. This encounter marked another turning point in Jacob's relationship with God. Jacob had seen firsthand how God had turned the hearts of those who sought to harm him. This growing awareness of God's protective power deepened Jacob's faith and brought him closer to understanding the nature of the God who had first revealed himself to him at Bethel. God was not just the God of his fathers, he was Jacob's God, actively guiding and protecting him. After parting ways with Laban, Jacob faced yet another formidable challenge: his reunion with his estranged brother, Esau. Jacob had fled from Esau many years before, fearing for his life after deceiving him out of his birthright and blessing. Now, as he prepared to return home, word reached him that Esau was coming to meet him with 400 men. Fear gripped Jacob's heart, for he knew that he had wronged his brother and was uncertain of Esau's intentions. But this time, Jacob was not the same man who had fled in fear all those years ago. He had come to know that there was a God who had spoken to him, protected him, and blessed him. For the first time, Jacob turned to God in earnest prayer. He prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper,' I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, 'I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted.'" In this prayer, Jacob acknowledged his dependence on God, recognizing that the situation with Esau was beyond his ability to control as a mere man. He appealed to God's promises and protection, demonstrating a newfound faith that had grown through his experiences. God heard Jacob's prayer, and in another act of divine intervention, he softened Esau's heart. When the brothers finally met, instead of violence, there was reconciliation. Esau ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. And they wept together, the bitterness of the past dissolved by God's mercy. This encounter with Esau was a powerful confirmation to Jacob that God was with him, guiding him through the most challenging of circumstances. It brought him even closer to God, solidifying his trust in the one who had proven himself faithful time and time again. But God was not finished with Jacob. On the night before he met Esau, Jacob had another extraordinary encounter. one that would change his identity forever. As Jacob was left alone, a man wrestled with him until daybreak. This mysterious figure was no ordinary man. He was an angel of the Lord, sent by God himself. The struggle was intense, and neither Jacob nor the angel prevailed until the angel touched the socket of Jacob's hip, wrenching it out of place. Yet even in pain, Jacob refused to let go until he received a blessing. The angel asked, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the angel said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." This wrestling match was orchestrated by God as a means of transforming Jacob. His new name, Israel, signified a new identity, one that reflected his journey from a supplanter, a deceiver, to a man who had striven with God and emerged changed. This encounter was not just a physical struggle. It was a spiritual one, where Jacob came face to face with God's power and purpose for his life. It was a pivotal moment where Jacob's understanding of God deepened, as he realized that his life was no longer his own, but was intricately woven into God's divine plan. All these experiences, the warning to Laban, the reconciliation with Esau, and the wrestling with the angel, were part of God's deliberate and loving plan to draw Jacob closer, to transform him, and to reveal more of his character. God was not distant or detached. He was intimately involved in Jacob's life, revealing his power, his mercy, and his faithfulness in ways that Jacob could not ignore. Through each trial, Jacob learned more about the God who had first appeared to him at Bethel, the God who was not only the God of Abraham and Isaac, but was now undeniably his God as well. And so Jacob, now Israel, continued his journey, forever marked by these divine encounters. He would carry with him not only the physical limp from his struggle with the angel, but a deeper spiritual understanding of who God was and what he intended for Jacob's life. God had taken a man who was once defined by his cunning and transformed him into a patriarch who would lead a great nation. Through every hardship and challenge, God was shaping Jacob into the man he had destined him to be, a man who knew God not just as a distant deity, but as a personal living presence in his life. Although Jacob suffered the deep sorrow of losing his beloved wife, Rachel, he found comfort in the unshakable truth that God was with him. This comfort was not just a fleeting feeling, but a profound realization that had grown within him over the years through his encounters with God. Imagine if the Jacob who blessed his 12 sons, the sons who were to become the 12 tribes of Israel, had been the same Jacob as before his encounter at Bethel. What kind of blessings would he have given them if he had not come to know the God who was the true owner and sustainer of these tribes? Perhaps without this knowledge, the tribes might not have existed as they did, shaped by the divine purpose that guided Jacob's words and actions. What I am getting at is that Jacob's struggles and hardships were not merely punishments for deceiving his brother, nor were they solely because of his name, though the change from Jacob to Israel was indeed significant. The struggles were not about the name, they were about the journey, a journey that God himself led Jacob through to transform him into the man he intended him to become. It was a process of refining and reshaping, a journey designed not just to correct Jacob but to mold him into the patriarch who would lay the foundation for God's chosen people. This was all a transformative journey. Every challenge Jacob faced, every hardship he endured, was part of a larger plan to prepare him for the role he was destined to fulfill. And this is written to remind us that not everything we go through is because we are cursed or because of some wrongdoing. Sometimes, what we endure is a necessary part of God's process of preparing us for where he wants to take us. The version of ourselves that we are today might not yet be ready for the future God has in store for us. Therefore, we may need to go through difficult experiences to become the person God wants us to be. However, it's important to recognize that this transformative journey is not the same for everyone. Each person's path is unique, shaped by God's specific plans and purposes for their life. So, whenever you find yourself going through hardship, talk to God about it. Keep talking to Him, seeking His guidance and understanding. And if the situation doesn't change immediately, give thanks. It could be that you are in the midst of your own transformative journey, a journey that is preparing you for the greater things that God has planned for you. Join us at Bible Revealed as we dive into stories, chapters, and mysteries of the Bible. Thank you, and God bless you.